Welcome back to Topher's Garage, everyone. So in the last video, we got the Dana 30 all torn down. So in this video, we're gonna start by taking the ball joints out and getting those replaced. And then we're gonna get the axle all cleaned up and painted, and we'll start putting some parts back on it. So let's get started. So I got this ball joint press kit on Amazon. I'll put the link to it in the description of the video. So what we're gonna do is start by pressing out the ball joints, and then we'll get moving on to getting the axle all cleaned up with a fresh coat of paint, and then we'll start putting new parts back on. All right, so we got the old ball joints pressed out. Started wire wheeling the axle here, but I'm gonna get it rolled out into the driveway so we can get it cleaned up and then get a coat of paint on it. And then we'll go from there. So the next thing I'm working on is getting these knuckles all cleaned up. I hit them with degreaser and scrubbed them. There's just some surface rust here. What I'm going to do is tape them off, all the important parts where bolts and things meet up. And then we'll get them painted with some, some rust converter, and then hit them with a gloss black. I'm not too concerned about how long it holds up, as it's an axle, it's going to get dirty and banged up on rocks and stuff. So just give us a good clean point to start from, and we can touch it up as we need. But we'll get to taping these off and get the painting. Also got the knuckles painted the other day. You can kind of see, just hit them with a coat of black paint. It looked pretty good. So those are all dried and ready to go back on. So we'll get the axle painted and then start putting things back together. All right, so while the axle was outside drying after washing it, I'm going to replace the U-joints. Picked up a couple from Rock Auto. So we'll get the old U-joints out and the new ones in. So with the axles out, the first thing you need to do is there's some C-clips in here. Let's see if you see the edge of one just right at the end of my thumb. And then there's another one right there at the end of my thumb. So I use a screwdriver just to kind of beat on those. They typically end up breaking when they're this old. But you got to do that first, get these C-clips off so we can start pressing the U-joints. And see, by tapping on that, it push the C-clip out, so we'll keep tapping on that and get it out of there. All right, so with all the C-clips off, now we can begin by pressing the U-joint one direction. It doesn't matter kind of which way, just got to make sure we press it this way, so then we can take the bearing caps off and then remove that side of the axle, and then we do it on the other side. So we'll get to doing that. So once you press it all the way through, you can take off the bearing cap. This one seems to have broken, which isn't great. You take that off, and then you press it back the other way, and you can get the other bearing cap off. With the other bearing cap pressed the opposite way, you can then kind of fish the two halves apart. All right, so with the other half pressed out, we're left with the little stub shaft and the U-joint. So we'll take our press and we'll do the same thing. We'll first press it this way, and we'll get this bearing cap off, and then we'll press it back the other way, and we'll take that bearing cap off, and then the U-joint will be free to come out. So now with this bearing cap off, we'll press it back the other way and get the other one off. There we go. There's the old U-joint. There we go, completed U-joint. So now we'll get to the next one. All right, so yesterday we got the axle all cleaned up. We got a fresh coat of paint on it. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change, there's an axle seal right about here. It was leaking and there was like grease and oil getting all over the knuckle and everything. So we're gonna get that seal replaced. So the first thing we'll have to do is punch the old seal out from the outside. And then it's kind of tricky to get it in at the new seal. So Jeep Solid has a great video on it, but basically you've got to do like a combination of, here's a seal. You've got to do a combination of different washers to try and get this as centered as possible when you're pressing it in. But like I said, Jeep Solid has a great video on how to do this. So I'm basically just mimicking what he did. And then we'll use this threaded rod to pull this seal into place from the outside. So let's get started on getting the old one out and then this new one in. So I forgot to film the second half of this, but I basically just followed the Jeep Solid video exactly. So once I get the new axle seal in, the next step is to move on to the ball joints. All right, so we got the ball joints installed, both sides, brand new ball joints. So we're gonna get the knuckles back on, torque down, and then we'll put our grease fittings in and grease this up. All right, so before I can put the hubs back on and the axles in, I need to change out this U-joint, or the pinion yoke, as a bolt broke off, and I tried drilling it out, but that didn't work. So I'm changing it out with this pinion yoke from Yukon Gear. It's got a U-bolt style attachment point for the U-joint, so we'll get to doing that. So one thing we need to do is make sure that we get the rotational torque that it takes to turn the yoke. It's called the preload on the bearings. There's pinion bearings right here about. And this nut is what sets the preload on those bearings. So we're gonna take a little inch-pound torque wrench, measure the rotational force to turn this, and then when we put our new one in and our new nut on, we'll try and get back to that figure. All right, so now that we got the pinion yoke on, we are going to get the axles in, and then we'll get the hubs on each side, and this will be ready to be installed. So I'm going to put some anti-seize on this face here, and then I'm gonna grease the splines of the axle shaft just so nothing is binding, and then we'll get the hub on. All right, now we'll just go around and torque them all to spec. So we got the hubs all bolted on and torqued to 75 foot-pounds per the spec. Next thing we need to do is get the axle nut on. So this one is at 175 foot-pounds, which is a lot. So we'll try and get to that. We may need to wait till we have the weight on the vehicle though. So we'll put some thread lock on there and get to tightening that nut down. All right, so this front axle is ready to go in the Jeep. So when we install it, we'll leave the cover off and fluid out for now, just so nothing leaks when we're putting it in. We're gonna take the rotors and calipers off the Jeep already, as they're pretty new, about a couple, maybe 1 or 2 years old. We'll use the steering components that are already in the Jeep, so we're not going to put back on the steering components that came with this axle. So yeah, we're ready to get this thing installed. We're also going to use the CAD housing from the Jeep that's already in there just because I know it works. I've obviously run in 4-wheel drive a bit, and the vacuum system that's in there works. I don't want to swap over to something and then have a problem with it. So this thing is ready to go. All right, so to prep the Ford 8.8 for the install, we're going to take the diff cover off and drain the fluid just to make it a little lighter, make sure it doesn't leak when we're putting it in. And then I picked up a block off plug for the ABS sensor from East Coast Gear Supply. So we'll get the ABS sensor out, and then we'll get the plug put in there, probably with a little RTV around it, just to seal it up. And then this will be ready to go in the Jeep. Undo the fill plug first, and then we'll get the diff cover off. All right, so we're gonna take this off, and then we'll put our ABS plug in there. There we go. I'll put a little RTV around this plug, and then we'll tap it in. All right, so we got the Ford 8.8 all prepped and ready to go. Diff fluid's out. We got the ABS sensor plug put in. That one is just ready to go. We got the Dana 30 all rebuilt, new hubs, new U-joints, new pinion yoke, all cleaned up and painted, new ball joints, and now this one's ready to go. So the next step is to get these axles in the Jeep. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.